Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. With our dear viewers, you are very welcome back from the election. I hope we have all managed to stay safe. I'm called Ashaba Ajara, and today we are to look at the overview, the road through the campaigns to the results of the presidential and the city and district elections that have been taking place since the 14th of January. And it's a pleasure having you guys back. It's been quite a while, and I'm excited about this particular one. It's a show that we normally call the Week in Focus. We are looking at the events that have pushed Uganda to where we are on this day. And in studios, we have Councillor Akampa Godfrey. Akampa, please say hello to the viewers.
Good evening, viewers. I'm Akampa Godfrey. Nice to meet you today.
Thank you, Akampa. Now, as we normally do at the start of our segments, we get a bit of a water break, and then we catch you right after. See you. Thank you for sticking by. You're welcome back. Again, Ashaba Ajara, and the Week in Focus is the show today. We are looking at the road to the election results, where we are today. And we are going to try and look at the events that occurred during this very unique election. 2016 is when we had an election right before this one. And we had two major contestants, Museveni and Besigye. Now, normally, as the constitution of Uganda says, we hold presidential elections and the subsequent ones every after 5 years. So the expectation was in 2021, we would hold an election that would tell us who the next president would be, who the members of parliament would be, and the councillors, and all the elective positions that we have. Now, fast forward 2019, November, December, China happened to have a virus that was later named coronavirus. And then it pushes us to 2020, and on 20th March 2020, the president of this country, Museveni, locks down the country because the virus had spread over. We remember that. Now, in the course of us sitting every day and listening to the president's speeches and updates about coronavirus, he gets to discuss holding a presidential and parliamentary and of course the whole election thing, and he says it's not reasonable. You would be mad to organize an election. But as Akampa will explain to us later, a president cannot be in his seat for more than the prescribed 5 years. For which reason, I don't know. But because of that, we found ourselves in a situation where we had to let the president go and have the speaker in place, or hold elections and risk lives. Well, of course, we chose the latter, and today here we are. And Akampa, if someone was to ask you for your opinion regarding the campaigns and the election in general, were we supposed to have it to begin with, considering the risk that was involved?
Of course, when you get to the figures around the world regarding coronavirus, we had, yes, life ought to be normal, only with maybe stocking of drugs and then improving the health infrastructure, having making better hospitals, and maybe any other required equipment, and then life continues as normal, so that whoever falls sick can visit the hospital, they are treated, and then they go back home. Those who can't make it would of course not make it, because we all know that coronavirus hasn't been that fatal. We've actually lost lives caused by many other challenges, other infections, or other diseases that are not corona, and many deaths. If we are to have figures of malaria, for example, or maybe death from pregnancies and similar things, even accidents maybe, many people have died of such things than actually avoidable things than coronavirus. So
sorry, I'm going to have to interject that one on that one, and I'm going to base my interjection on two bases. One, Malawi held an election barely 3 months ago, and their coronavirus infections have gone up by the last time I checked, BBC was saying 30%. Now, that is the statistical part. Now, there is the moral part where even if you lose one person, where a family loses one person to a disease as preventable as COVID, and preventable through withholding certain an activity that the country would progress without, like an election. It wouldn't make much sense to someone that has lost their loved one. I know a family that lost a father, a mother, and a child. Is it really worth it?
Well, if it's a matter of avoiding the infection or avoiding the death, then why wouldn't they opt to go scientific? Full scientific, no rallies. You go on TV, you visit radio stations which are scattered over the country, and campaign. After all, the audience is the same.
But there is a point in campaigns at which the Ministry of Health designated certain districts not healthy to campaign in, to hold everything scientific, and I'm very sure you're one of those people that were against that.
I was against it because it was being discriminative. If you start scientific, go scientific. They ought to make the decision early enough, and then it's full swing scientific. Nothing like at a certain point we shall stop at a certain point, because they ought to have seen this coming, that maybe the figures will rise and things may run out of hand, and then probably we don't have enough facilities, so let's just go scientific.
Don't you think you're basing that on an assumption that districts in Uganda, when it comes to COVID, carry the same risk percentage?
Of course, I would say that, because we are all interactive. Since we interact, people travel to the villages, others travel back. The festive season was around, the government did nothing. People were going to the villages and then coming back. So if that was the case, they should have also considered maybe to stop them from traveling. The whole thing is, if they opted to make it scientific, it ought to be scientific, because they did not have any mechanism to stop it from, to stop the rallies, or make sure the rallies would comprise of 200 people or less.
All right, thanks, Akampa. But now I take you back to the original question. If someone asked you to sum up the campaigns, what's your opinion? Were they, as a lawyer, in your opinion, were they something that goes to the standard of what should be called a campaign where opponents are competing, or was it something oppress one side and let the other one?
It was totally lacking in a way that yes, of course, I would see maybe one candidate or two try one mode, another one does it in another mode. But the moment you open campaigns, then you ought to let people campaign. Nothing like campaign here, then if I don't want you to campaign today from this part, I don't allow you, then I stop you from moving to another place, yet you're supposed to. Remember, these are people who had 60 days. Then we have hundreds of districts, sub-counties, thousands probably, parishes, thousands. And one ought to probably visit all of them, and maybe many other urban centers, which are not necessarily districts or district headquarters. So you ought to allow someone move easily. If you have allowed them a district, let them move, so long as they won't meet the other candidate, because they had schedules.
But don't you think that when you say that, someone would, for Uganda would say Okabia change, because we have always seen that. So we have, as Ugandans, we have either refused to accept the existing reality that we don't have a leveled ground when it comes to elections. And speaking of that, as you get to that, would you have a quick assessment as to the competitions that Museveni has always had against Besigye and the competition that he had against Bobby this time? Which one was more fierce?
My view here is that in the first place, we ought not to have that election before we got reforms. With no reforms, things would be the same. And no wonder things were the same.
What reforms would you recommend?
One, you can't be, I mean, the president remains with all the powers. He's president, but also a presidential candidate. You ought to, at least, he ought to drop some of the presidential privileges, some of the presidential powers during elections.
Like which ones?
You saw the convoy that he always had. You saw how he accesses the funds that fund State House and even increases the budget shortly before the election. We saw billions coming in. That incumbency, the power of incumbency, accessing funds, accessing everything you want to access. As you look the sources of other candidates, you make sure they don't access funds from whoever they are going to get it. Then for you, you access funds from even the consolidated fund.
A realist would call that a competitive advantage. And the other one chose to take advantage of that.
But not really, because here is someone who is saying, look, you won't access the resources to campaign. Then for him, he's going ahead to access public resources.
Yes.
That whole convoy is run by a budget from consolidated fund.
Yes.
Then even the State House itself, where he visits, its finances, where he goes, it finances. All that ought to go before we go for elections. That should be severed. Then he goes in as a candidate.
So in your opinion, you're saying that if candidate Museveni, the president of the country, is standing, he should have to run as Museveni the person, use the resources of Museveni the person.
Absolutely.
So how do you tell the resource, considering that he's been in that house for 35 years, how do you tell that right now we are dealing with the resources of Museveni the person from Museveni the president?
One, of course, for example, an MP who is a minister under the law is not allowed to use his ministry car during campaigns.
Do they use them or do they not?
Others do not.
There is the legal part, there is the real part.
But they actually they are cautious. They don't always use them. And those who try, finally they get issues when they go through, and then their petition, and then the other party petitions Parliament. It ends up being an issue. So they limit themselves. So long as the law is in place, you try to limit yourself. You can't be open like. So at that point, we should also have certain privileges cut off completely from this president who is now a presidential candidate.
All right. Now, Akampa, to the last part of the campaigns, do you think Museveni spent as much resources as he used to when we didn't have this COVID situation? And two, would a candidate from these campaigns manage to win an election, a candidate other than Museveni, according to how you saw the campaigns?
One, of course, I would say probably he used less, because I remember in 2016 when they were paying people to come for the rallies. This time, in some places, we did not have rallies. He was always meeting agents, and then they are the ones who would do the job. Yeah. So he spent less probably, and then he did not have to run the rallies. You know, it's also an expense, a big one. So this time I think he spent less. Then, going to whether another candidate would win, I would say it is impossible for someone to win without the electoral reforms and with President Museveni as a candidate in the race.
So you're saying Museveni is invincible?
Without electoral reforms, with him in the race, no question.
All right. Thank you, Akampa. We are going to run for a very short break. When we come back, we will be looking at the next segment of the show. Thank you for keeping us company. See you. Good evening. We appreciate the company, really. Please continue liking the page, continue supporting. The page is Muslim Channel Uganda. If you're there, you know the page already, so please, you tell your friends that haven't joined to subscribe. And we are found on YouTube, so do the same. Subscribe, tell a friend that there is this very interesting channel that is bringing us the politics to our doorsteps. Anyway, so Akampa, then we have the election, and Museveni wins. So the first question, do you think there were irregularities? Do you think there was rigging? If there was rigging, or if there wasn't, do you think that if you took away what you would consider the rigged votes, if there were any, would Bobi Wine still be able to beat Museveni in this election?
Well, I would say, actually, of course, it's because President Museveni is used to rigging. He rigs even when he has support. And then this time, there were many other factors that actually, some of which actually gave him support that he had never had and he was not entitled to. Factors like the rise of Bobi Wine, then when the tribal factor came in, and then the new party coming in, and the new party that brought in excitement. So this time he would win with or without rigging. But even if you maybe took away the rigging and then the other irregularities, actually there has never been a perfect election. The question would only be whether the irregularities affected the exercise a lot, that maybe it affected the results to an extent that one would not probably attain 51% plus 1, or probably would not even win at all. But
are you saying that it's possible Museveni in a free and fair election against Chagulanyi wouldn't raise the required minimum percentage?
I believe so, probably. I believe he wouldn't get 51% plus 1 vote. Which is required. But he would probably be leading, but without the required percentage.
All right. So what I saw in the riots that happened shortly before the elections, and then the culmination into the, if you look at the election, we see Bobby winning in areas that formerly voted for Besigye. And then Museveni polling reasonable percentage in some, and then losing a reasonable percentage in the other. And when it comes to the Uganda region, Museveni lost tremendously. However, when you look at the election that Uganda held this time, Patrick Omuriat Oboy won in Soroti, where he comes from. Museveni had very high percentages in the west, where he comes from, save for Kasese. Then Besigye used to get a good percentage from the north, but now he wasn't there. Museveni dominated that. Karamoja, as usual, was voting in 90s, the percentages. Then if you go down east, other than Soroti, Museveni won in the others, including Busia and Tororo, where he had been, where Chagulanyi was leading initially. So what is your basis of saying that Museveni would actually not pull off the 50%?
Why I still believe that without bribery of voters and then manipulation of some few figures, and then maybe even some incidences of ballot stuffing, he would not get that percentage. Is that one, he spent a lot of money. That if that money wasn't brought into the exercise, probably it would reduce that percentage. Remember, this is someone who is about 8%, about 6% above the required percentage, above 50%.
Yeah.
So we are looking at, if you did not rig, if you did not about staff, if you did not bribe the voters, if you don't do such things, would you have had this 7%?
Are we working on the assumption that Museveni managed to bribe the West, North and East but did not bribe those in Busoga and Uganda?
He did, but there are those, you see, not everyone you bribe has to vote for you. Some others don't change actually. They take the money and still vote a person of their choice. Remember, you're not watching them. But there are those, because there are those who are convicted, who have that conviction, that have to support so and so. And regardless of how much money you throw there, they'll vote for that person. But there are those who will always change, who are there, who can sway, regardless of, I mean, when you bring in any benefit, material benefit, they just change and then they immediately begin to convince others to also change as they also cash them out of their original position.
We had our same old problem. 11 million Ugandans voted, but we had registered 18.1 million Ugandans, implying that 7.1 million people did not vote. What do you think causes that?
Where certainly belong. One, there was this, actually we also contemplated on going to court. Before we went for this election, there was COVID, as you earlier stated. So COVID displaced some people. There are some people who lost jobs, changed their addresses because of loss of the jobs. There are some people who are running away from town, who are like, now town has become dangerous. Then there are some people who, there are some students who would probably be staying in some places and they registered from there. Then they have to relocate because of COVID. And then there are those whose life became hard in town because of the economic hardship that was propelled by COVID-19, who also relocated. Someone cannot get their 20,000 to go back to where they had registered from so that they can vote so and so, more especially when they even know the likelihood of the election, they know the results. So many people would not go. Then others have since lost trust in the whole election exercise. That even if I vote for an MP, they are going to reach there, they only begin to transact and then keep money, and then they won't even do what they ought to do. They won't they won't be active MPs. They won't present our views. They will do their own business. So others end up not getting engaged in that exercise because they believe it doesn't really help them.
Okay. Speaking of MPs, Mwesigwa Rukutana, Vincent Sempija, Amelia Chambade, we could go on and on and on. And this was not just in Uganda where people overwhelmingly voted for NUP. This happened even in Western Uganda, even including people like Arisa Araso and Beatrice Anywa. Ministers overwhelmingly lost their seats. Incumbent MPs overwhelmingly lost their seats. And whereas we may not necessarily attribute this to the NUP factor, even when it's very contributory. But then if you were to pull out things like Toji Kwatako, how people voted during that enactment of that law, what are the other possible reasons why people would vote Museveni back and not vote his people?
One, as these MPs campaign, there is a lot they promise. And then there is a lot the masses expect from them. There is the minimum standard they expect an MP to maybe perform. And actually leaving out the NUP factor, those MPs, those ministers were going to lose. They were bound to lose. I mean, they also knew that. And actually it has been even a trend. Even in the previous, in the 9th Parliament, then the 8th, we saw many people, many ministers would. This time, of course, the number was too big. Yes, this time the number was too big because they have demonstrated an incapable parliament. The 10th Parliament was really funny, and maybe the 11th one is going to be funnier. But people were like tired of them and the way they do their things. Because remember, at the end of the day, you are a representative of the people. So people are saying, but taxation. Then you're busy saying, okay, we'll even tax you again for mobile money. We'll tax you again for OTT. Then people, as they cry out, you're like, you should pay taxes. Then people are saying, but don't do this. We feel that the president, we feel we should have age limit or term limits. Then you are busy transacting their views into some other person's view who gives you money. So it was bound to happen. Actually, those ministers you have mentioned spent lots of money trying to even bribe, but people were not ready to do that. And they chose different people to replace them.
Now, I wanted us to look at the religion factor. We have an increase in the number of Muslim MPs in parliament, and regarding the information we got earlier, Kampala has pushed a Muslim Lord Mayor again to City Hall. Do you think that we have a religious factor playing gradually into the politics of the country?
Of course, initially before the coming in of NRM, religion was also a big factor. NRM began to neutralize it slowly by slowly until today when they downplay it. But in some places it's still a guiding factor. In my own constituency, Chris Bayomons went through because of religion. At a point when he was losing miserably, he now began to say they are pushing me because I'm Catholic. Look, I'm being pushed because I'm Catholic. And then immediately people began to change and they're like, no, I think we need to change
our own.
But let's now vote in our own. So much as it's not a big deal, I mean, people first consider other factors. Then it can always come in. In Kampala, actually, it has been, I would say we have been having leaders like central. We have an MP, central youth. Central Kampala MP.
Central MP, yeah.
Then we also had Kampala Woman MP.
Yeah.
Then the Lord Mayor.
Municipality, yeah.
They have been from the Muslim community. But remember again, we also have the other corporate world coming in. Now these are the leading businessmen around town who can always also front their candidate and try to push him. So you can't also you can't say that it doesn't come into. I mean, it's not one of the factors, but at the end of it all, you must be a good. You must demonstrate someone good enough to lead, someone who's going to perform.
Okay. Considering NRM's 2016-2021 term and the mayhem that happened to the Muslim community, would you say that had even the least reason to contribute towards pushing those guys to parliament?
I really doubt. Not really. Not really, because remember, it's not the first time such incidences are happening. We've seen politics, of course, being played against sometimes the Muslim community, but there is a way they also try to neutralize it slowly by slowly. I wouldn't say it's a big factor, because at the end of it all, even if it was a Catholic or an Anglican or a born again, here in Kampala under NUP, and there is no any, I mean, the rest are not Muslims or NRM, but they are Muslims. I can assure you the other Muslim would miserably lose.
Something, if you bring in the NUP factor, then something pushes me to ask you how come we have Semuju and FDC and Muhammad Sereko and Independent back in parliament.
These are guys who have been outstanding. If we are to rate the ratings, we would place Semuju Nganda and Muhammad Sereko among the top 10 best MPs we had in the 10th parliament. So those ones really deserved to be voted back.
Okay.
Because they are the people who stood even when the whole country was crying that, hey, let the position be this, let this bill be opposed. OTT is a problem. OTT is going to cripple our small businesses. Mobile money taxes are going to cripple our businesses. These are guys who stood and opposed all such things. These are guys who have stood to fight what one would say social injustices, and the whole world knows about it. Actually, I believe if Semuju or Nsereko were taken in Mbarara somewhere in the middle of town and then they stand, they would still get support.
So as we close in on the break of this segment, there is something I wanted us to build on. Uganda in the 60s and the role that was played by tribal politics. If someone say that there is a party DP And then now NUP comes, and almost every powerful person that we have in DP that comes from this region moves. So basically, where we used to have DP in the 60s, we have their NUP right now. So how intense, how dangerous is the sport that tribalism has us in right now? Because when you look at the elections, generally from the West and Buganda, you see that the Banyankole and the Bachiga and the Batora and the Banyoro voted for the Munyankole, and the Baganda voted for the Muganda. Where does that put us as a country?
Of course, that would be it's very, very, actually very bad. And I think the government needs to come up and always try to see how they can handle those tribal differences to make sure that the situation doesn't escalate. Because at the end of it all, one should identify themselves as Uganda, not as Munyankole, Muganda, Munyarwanda, or Acholi. But of course, it's historical also.
Yeah. It's
historical that Buganda of course managed to, I would say Buganda was colonizing other parts on behalf of the British, and had influence in Kabale, all the way to Kabale, all the way to Hoima Masinda, I would say.
Someone else would say,
and then
that Nkole had influence in Kabale, not Buganda.
Not really, actually. Even Nkole itself was administered by many Baganda who have since settled there and are still there. They were the administrators in those regions on behalf of the British. Then when we got independence, remember we got independence with a few powerful parties.
Yeah.
And those are the parties we're talking about in the 60s. UPC, then DP,
and
then the
Kabaka Yeka, that was part of UPC.
At the end of it all, why I would still say yes, a tribal factor comes in is we saw the biggest defection from DP to another party, this new party. We have always had new parties.
Yeah.
For the first time, when DP was under a man from Acholi.
Yeah.
And then they were defecting to a new party that was formed by their own.
Yeah.
So it wasn't by surprise. But at the end of it all, I can tell you there are some other factors. But of course, tribe is also a serious factor that one can build on, especially if they are not good enough ideologically. If they are not good enough, they can build on that and try to get support. Of course, the question is, how far will it take you?
Are you implying that we had another factor bigger than the Buganda question in the politics of Uganda that led to the influence of NUP in Buganda?
Of course, there is also this that has been in place that, remember, even when we did not have the powerful Muganda standing, we have always had Buganda saying no,
standing against
to the
Museveni.
Establishment, yes, to NRM. And they really tried. This strongest region was here in Buganda than even Ankole itself.
But it was Wakiso Buganda, and rather Wakiso Kampala and Mukono, not the Chibogas, Tiana, Mubende and all.
Yes, that is very true. But at the end of it all, the question is, where was the center? Where is the majority of these people? It's still in Kampala here. And actually in urban centers, in other urban centers, Besigye has always had support, be it Ginger, be it...
Which Bobby did, he inherited the support of Besigye. So
Besigye out of question would mean Bobby would get Besigye's support and then maybe get some top up, which would be attributed to other factors like the tribe.
All right, thank you guys, we really appreciate the company. Now we have to very briefly look at the future of Ugandan Parliament, what awaits us in the next 5 years, and how Akampa views the Lord Mayor election, whether there was supposed to be a bit of change, but we'll see you right after. Thank you for being with us.
In this generation and on, early digital literacy will have a huge impact on self-development and strategic intelligence. .NET Hub is cracking the future's code. Kids Who Code is a youth-based circuit program at .NET Hub. This is an initiative to help the kids begin their engineering journey. guiding them and activating their intuition abilities. Learning how to assemble robot systems, and learning how to communicate with these machines. Learning coding is the only way to stay competitive in this emerging technology growth and global technology market. The future doesn't just happen. Future gets happened. Embrace technology. Have your child enrolled this holiday? The future is in technology, and brighter future lies in transcending it. Let's live and lead. Join the Hub community today for AI, machine learning, smart technologies, and software development.
Welcome back. Good evening once again. Thank you for viewing the Muslim channel Uganda. Thank you so much. Thank you for liking the page. Thank you for always being with us. We appreciate that. There is no words that can express. There are no words that can express our gratitude, but we thank you for always staying with us. Now we have Segirinya Muhammad in Parliament. We have Kaziwe Bashir Mbazira in Parliament. Gerard Karuhanga was replaced by an NRM person. We have changes. What, in your opinion, can we expect from this Parliament? Is it going to be worse than the previous one, or can it do better?
It's going to be the worst in the history of this nation. One, it's the biggest we have ever had in this country. The biggest, like in number. We have never had 500 MPs. I think there are now 500 plus MPs.
520.
So it's going to be the biggest, and then the most useless, because it has poor quality leaders. I would say poor quality representatives.
When we have guys
including
like
those
Mwada Mpunyiji coming on board.
Yes, we'll have, of course, as usual, we'll have a handful of them who are capable of discerning issues, who are capable of debating, who are capable of understanding what the effect of a particular bill, why it's brought, the principle behind it. Very few can comprehend. Then the rest will always warm their chairs and earn.
We don't have those that will sleep lately, except if Kahinda will be there. But the usual sleepers are not coming back, including our second.
They will sleep. They will sleep. It's not, of course, age that was only age that was making them sleep. Even being there dormant, inactive, can make someone sleep. They will sleep. Just wait. Even these young ones who are coming in will sleep. Others will actually be dodging, and then they won't be coming. I always see it empty as they go around town to do whatever they do. Then they come and sign their money and then go back. The whole thing is we are going to always have a rubber stamp parliament of President Museveni. And now it's even going to be more divided, because we are seeing FDC with some number. It has been the leading opposition party.
Yeah, it's now bruised.
Now with then about 30-something members. Then we have NUP with 60-something members.
Yeah.
Divided, of course, they also don't agree on some things. Then we also have now NRM, which has an advantage over these divided enemies.
Yeah.
And then it will be comedy as usual.
Yeah. But if you look at the quality of leaders we were electing, including Kyagulanyi against Museveni, what does it speak of the Ugandans and the vote and the change they are voting for? Are we trying to get better, or are we trying to just make sure that we subdue yellow?
The whole thing is, Ugandans is even voting anyway. If you have 18.1 million registered voters, then you see 11 turning up. Ugandans voting. that shows you that they are not even voting.
We should
Because if the other if the other 18,
seven.
I mean the other 7.1, or okay, 7, let's say the one is for those maybe who are sick, who can't make it. If the other 7 shows up, do you know what would happen? Someone would go home even when they have the guns.
I should be
Other
asking you
MPs,
that. You're
some
one of
ministers.
those that don't vote.
Of course, sometimes you don't, I mean, you don't engage in an exercise that won't change anything.
But 7 million votes would change something, Akam.
The question is, if we showed up, the 7 million, if we opted to show up and vote, would the figures be reflected in the results? If they won't be, then why should I bother myself?
But Akampa, if the 11 vote and they are reflected, what makes you think that the 7, if they voted?
Who will reflect that? As I earlier stated, without electoral reforms, nothing. I mentioned one factor of the incumbency. I did not tell you the factor of media, where the media is under control by the state. Actually, I would say under maybe bondage by the state. I did not mention the factor of who appoints the one who is tallying the votes. I did not mention the factor of who are those that are at the districts, the returning officers, and the formula, the criteria they use to post them in those different centers, where you'll find almost one district producing all the returning officers in the country.
Quick question, Akapa. Who then should be appointing those people if not the government? Who should be appointing the returning officers, the presiding officers, the electoral commission? What should be appointing them if not the government?
There should be an independent body that appoints. Now, why should a chairman of the electoral commission be appointed by the president, who in turn will be a candidate?
No, and the question, no, I see that. The question is, who should be appointing them?
Of course, for the other ones, I would say somehow they apply, and then there is the vetting, and then there is this, and there is the other, the normal exercise.
You know, at the end of the process, whether it is vetting, whether it is choosing someone that is going to choose them, still it's going to go back to the fact that the person that is picking them was actually picked by the government.
The most important factor is the man at the top, the chairman of that electoral commission. The rest can always be sorted. Because the moment people, if 10 million voted for candidate A, you as a returning officer may really not do anything.
It's the same question, Akampa, who can appoint the the chairperson of the electoral commission?
It can be the way the Judicial Service Commission does it, much as it also later runs to the president to appoint.
So who appoints the Judicial Service Commission?
The body, it's actually, that one is very fair in a way that people apply, they are scrutinized, and then appointed.
You are saying that in a government like ours that runs and controls everything, we have powers that may hold power that is as the same as the electoral commission, and their appointment is not scrutinized by the top guns of
so,
the government.
number one, bodies like URA, bodies like electoral commission, bodies like okay, those statutory corporations that matter a lot. The president should have no powers whatsoever to know how someone is appointed. The bodies themselves.
You know, okay, this is what I'm driving at. This is the question that I'm actually putting to you. That who is going to be the appointing authority? The ultimate appointing authority of whichever body is in place. Because, for example, if you look at URA, Doris Akol was fired by the president. So I'm asking you to take us through the feasibility of having an actually independent electoral commission in a state.
Yes, and I'm saying, as you gave an example of Doris Akol, Doris Akol ought to be appointed by URA without even knowledge of the president. Starts the exercise, whether it advertises, applicants put in the application forms, then they get the best of who they think will do the job, of course, after public scrutiny also, and even the interviewers. Then they appoint. If it's firing, then it should also be done in a similar way. That, you see, if he hires you and then he can fire you, then you're always at their mercy. If he says, okay, I have a consignment of A, B, C, D, or my wife, or my brother, or my cousin, would you as Doris Akol say, okay, these containers won't get in without paying the taxes?
How about where he has the power over the people appointing you, like URA?
That would be another factor, but at least let's start by seeing him not appointing. Here we are giving, even here we are saying he doesn't, it's not even about the power over those who appoint. Now here is the power for him to appoint. Let's first take that away. Then we can always check these ones who are in office. Because those ones can even be checked by the law. Remember, for him, it can't even be checked by the law. So if they fault anything and then it so happens that, remember, if he appoints you, you owe allegiance to him. You always feel compromised. If you want something, you always want to do it for him.
You know, as we conclude on that, because I want you to go to the next speech and we get done, I'm going to remind you of a time Rukutana was accused of shooting someone in Erushen during the NRM primaries.
Yes. And
he was arrested and he was taken to Mbara. And friends, including Jim Mwez and Kaindo Tafiri, went there and bailed him out. And when they were on the doorsteps of the cells, the president called, because now it's not the president in charge of who is giving bail and who is giving the bond and not, but he calls and he orders that man cannot leave the premises. And we are going to leave that at that, but there was a mayor election today. What has Lukwago done for Kampala that keeps him in power, and him not losing this election, even after people showed, after last time, that for them they can go to the election and vote overwhelmingly for just a party symbol? Does that make him indispensable?
Well, actually it should be what hasn't Lukwago done. I would say Lukwago has done it as an MP, I mean as a Lord Mayor. He has tried his best. Actually, it's during Lukwago's tenure, since he came in as a Lord Mayor, that we saw Kampala transforming. Of course, I would say maybe because of the act, of the KCCA Act, that streamlined things and then reduced corruption. And then
should we attribute the initial success and the improvements we saw in the city to Lukwago, Jenny from the city?
Well, of course, yes, I would say. Remember, Lukwago was always there checking Musisi. Musisi also says, I came to work and tried to do her best to change the city the way they wanted the city to be organized. So I think even their differences were better for the public.
So who do you give the day, Lukwago?
I would say Lukwago, because Lukwago was always having an eye on the executors of the duties on those who are implementing, as much as they would also try to outsmart him, try to push him, try to use crooked means against him, but he was up to the job.
So the improvements that we saw blossom during the Musisi era, and what we have seen, because we have seen a slump, we have gone back to the pre-Musisi and initial Lukwago Kampala. Would you say that the government was letting those improvements happen because one of theirs was running the city, or?
One would say that's one of the factors, but another factor was, at one point, probably they wanted to make the public feel like the Lord Mayor is irrelevant, and then that political office is irrelevant, because there has been a fight where the state feels like that Lord Mayorship should either go to NRM, and if it can't go to NRM, it should be there useless, ceremonial, which of course they haven't managed. Because even when they try to fight it, even when they reduce the powers, he still keeps checking them. You know, checking is too important that check keeps someone on tension, that they have to do A, B, C, D. If they want, it's like when you are watching a thief, they rarely steal. They will do their job. If they get, if you maybe somehow they take some little money, like that.
Okay, Akampa, as we conclude, last bit, Kyagulanyi Robert Center, next 5 years, is he going to have as much momentum as he had when he was in Parliament, or are we going to see silence maybe?
His only survival will now depend on the MPs he has sent to Parliament under NUP. But again, remember, he has no platform. Apparently, he's not an MP. He's simply a party president. And then remember the issue of party presidency, and then candidates come in during the election period.
Yeah.
So he would really he'll have a hard time to do anything, including activism. He'll have hard time. Like we used to see Besigye here. I remember for Besigye, it was even, he had structures all over the country, but still they would make it hard for him to visit even a local radio station. So Kyagulanyi may not even visit a station around Kampala to talk about anything, including what matters a lot.
All right, Akampa, thank you for being with us today. The viewers, thank you so much. Please continue liking the page, like the shows. Feel free to throw in any comment, question, supplement, anything. Thank you for always being here to watch the shows and share with your friends. Continue liking the page. You go to YouTube, look for Muslim Channel Uganda, subscribe to it, share the same with your friends. We appreciate the support. Thank you. See you next time.